Live from the Persephone Theatre in the Ramey Arts Centre on the banks of the South Saskatchewan River in beautiful downtown Saskatchewan. Good afternoon and welcome to Why Ag Matters, an agricultural dialogue with Saskatchewan political parties. Thank you to our guests, agricultural producers, representatives, and farm organizations, and candidates, and online viewers joining us today. My name is Norm Hall, and I'm the president of the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan, or APAS. APAS is the province's general farm organization representing thousands of farm families living in one of over 100 RMs across the province. Our role is to provide a unified voice to all levels of government to benefit Saskatchewan's agricultural producers. Agriculture is the foundation of our province. Saskatchewan has nearly half of Canada's arable farmland, directly employing 50,000 Saskatchewan people. Our agriculture industry accounts for over 1/3 of the province's total exports. Last year marked the 5th year that Saskatchewan has set a record for agri-food exports with total sales of over $15 billion. That's why Ag matters. And that's why all agricultural stakeholders in Saskatchewan should be aware of the issues that are relevant to our industry as we head into the 2016 provincial general election. We need to discuss, identify strategies and policies to secure a sustainable future for farm families and rural communities. In a few short days, hundreds of thousands of Saskatchewan voters will be going to the polls in the 28th general election. This year we have 5 political parties actively campaigning for your vote. Today each party has sent their agricultural experts or their leaders to share their thoughts on why Ag matters. To introduce them and explain a bit about today's format, I'd like to introduce to you our moderator. She is a diversity strategist, professional speaker, trainer, and best-selling author who has worked internationally and throughout Canada. Please help me welcome your moderator, Jeannie Martinson. Jeannie, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Norman. Thanks for inviting me. Welcome to our studio audience, our audience online through the Western Producer website, and our viewing audience who will be seeing this debate on March 27th or March 31st on Access or Shaw stations throughout the province. Before I introduce the panel, let me inform you as to the process we will be following for the next hour and a bit. After the panel introductions, I will be asking our panelists a series of questions. They will have 1 to 2 minutes to answer the question before the next panelist's turn. As this is not just a live debate, but a television production, timing is important, so we will be keeping a brisk pace and holding each panelist to their time allotment. To that end, we will be giving each panelist a 90-second, 60-second, 30-second, and 15-second signal. When their time is up, you will hear this bell, which means they have 2 seconds to wrap up their sentence. Before we move on to the next panelist, if they continue beyond their 2-second grace period, their mic will be muted, and I will have the dubious honor of cutting them off. Remember that the panelists have been provided the information that we will be discussing today and have had ample time to construct appropriate responses to these issues. You can judge them based on their knowledge of the issues, their party's stance on the issues, whether they actually answered the question, and also whether they handled themselves today in a professional and respectful manner. I'm hoping that everyone keeps to their time, so I'm not accused of being rude to our agricultural experts. If you have any questions for our panel that you don't feel are being addressed, make sure that you tweet them to #WhyAgMatters, to @PresidentAPAS, APAS, or @Western Producer throughout our first segment, and we will address those at the end of the program. Now on to our panelists. The candidate to the immediate left is Darrin Lamoureux. Darrin is leader of the Saskatchewan Liberal Party and is the candidate for Regina Pasqua. Darrin is a successful business owner, currently residing in Regina, and has worked for most of his career in construction. He has been active in numerous campaigns under the Liberal banner at all levels of government. Our next panelist is Rick Swenson. Rick is the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Saskatchewan and is a candidate in the riding of Last Mountain Touchwood. Rick farms in the Belden district and served as an MLA from 1985 to 1995. During that time, he was also legislative secretary to the Minister of Agriculture, cabinet minister for several portfolios, and leader of the official opposition. Our third panelist is Ryan Lamarche, the agricultural critic for the Saskatchewan Green Party and a candidate for the riding of Bigger Sask Valley. Rick has been involved in politics since he was 16 years old. Our fourth candidate, Cathy Sproule, is the NDP ag critic and a candidate in the riding of Saskatoon-Nutana. Born and raised on a farm in southern Saskatchewan, Cathy worked as a lawyer in Aboriginal law prior to being elected as an MLA in 2011. She is the deputy caucus chair for the official opposition and holds several critic responsibilities. Our fifth and final panelist is Lyle Stewart, the recent Minister of Agriculture under the Saskatchewan Party and a candidate in the riding of Lumsden Morse. Alongside his wife Linda and son Lee, Lyle farms and ranches in the area around Pence. He has served as an MLA since 1999 and in 2012 was appointed as the Minister of Agriculture and Minister responsible for Saskatchewan Crop Insurance Corporation. Now to our first question. The order of our panel will address this question in Darrin Lamoureux with the Liberal Party, then Rick Swenson with the Progressive Conservative Party, Ryan Lamarche with the Green Party, Cathy Sproule with the NDP, ending with Lyle Stewart from the Saskatchewan Party. Each candidate has 2 minutes to address this question. Please note the timekeeper will give you time at 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds, 90 seconds, 60 seconds, 30 seconds, and 15 seconds. When you hear the bell, you are allowed to finish your sentence. If you go over a few seconds, remember your mic may be muted. So, our first question, starting with Darrin. Earlier this month, APAS published and shared the document that everyone is aware of, Why Agriculture Matters. And this document contains key agricultural issues and policy recommendations for the 2016 provincial election. Most of this debate's questions will revolve around the issue addressed in the document. APAS spent considerable effort in gathering these recommendations from their representatives living across the province, so they represent the most important concerns facing farmers right now. Copies have been provided for our studio audience, and our online viewers can download the document if they don't have it already at apas.ca. So the future looks promising for, so the question is, my page went out of order, Norm. The question is, for 2 minutes, why does agriculture matter? So we're starting with Darrin.
Agriculture has played a big role in developing Saskatchewan since we became a province in our confederation since 1905. Before the oil boom, as people want to say, in 2007, agriculture was what made the industry of Saskatchewan prosper. It created a large tax base that provided services, health services, and education services for everybody throughout Saskatchewan. So the Liberal Party believes that the promotion of an ag program is important to be able to reach international markets, to be able to sell our products and have that line of communication from a federal to provincial governments, and making sure that countries like India, Philippines, and all the other ones can buy our lentils, our grains, and our seeds, and our commercial crops. So with this being said, the communication and actually consulting with the levels of governments are important to the Saskatchewan Liberal Party, and we do believe that being the breadbasket of the world, we have so much to offer, especially with the additional population, the global increase in population, that the commodity prices are going to be increasing. What we're lacking right now is the infrastructure to get our commodities to market. We've seen it 2 years ago when the grains were rotting on our field because of poor infrastructure. Manitoba didn't have that problem. They were able to go to Port of Churchill, and 345,000 metric tons of grain was able to go through this port. Saskatchewan Liberal Party believes by putting in the same type of rail system connected through to the Paw and the Flin Flon and getting it up to the Port of Churchill will actually enhance the transportation model that we could be using, not just for our agriculture product, but for all of our commodities that are going through the Port of Churchill and expanding Saskatchewan's economy. The other part that the Saskatchewan Liberal Party believes is that we should be putting more funding into agricultural and our University of Saskatchewan, where we can start teaching a better way of seeding and enhancing crop growth to be able to have more crops being provided in a shorter growing season. These are the things that the Saskatchewan Liberal Party are talking about this election.
Thank you, Darrin. Rick, your response to why agriculture matters.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, President Norm, APAS members, fellow panelists. On behalf of the PC Party of Saskatchewan, it's great to be here today talking about what has been our number one industry through our history. It's my industry. I'm a lifelong farmer, rancher. And so what happens is important to me and my family, but also to the well-being of this province. Agriculture plays a very significant role in the GDP of this country. We have half the agricultural land in Canada. So for it not to matter would be sheer nonsense. It is why people came here. That's why people all over the world came to this place and created a society, was free of having land that they actually owned. They could build communities around, and it is the basis of our society. It's a great primary industry because it does so many different things. It's also a great industry for adding value to. There's many value chains that come off of agriculture. And because of that, it is also a very large employment opportunity, not only for Saskatchewan, but for the country. And certainly we've seen with the downturn in some of the other commodities lately that if agriculture hadn't been here traditionally, filling its traditional role, but also stepping up to the plate, we would be facing extremely difficult times. Absolutely, it matters. And if we don't do the things necessary to keep it functioning the way that it should, then our society itself will begin to fail. And I think we're going to have a good discussion about that this afternoon.
Thank you, Rick. And just for the panelists, remember the timekeeper is to my right to help us keep on time. Thank you to our first two speakers for being within the time frame. Ryan Lamarche, what is your response to the question why agriculture matters?
Yes, well, why agriculture matters. Number one, most obvious reason is I like to eat. We all like to eat. It's very important overall. That is straight up about it. Agriculture is what Saskatchewan truly is. You can talk to any generation of people from Saskatchewan. There's farming roots in their blood, pretty much. It's very, very, the whole family fabrication has been built around it. I feel that my generation is just after the baby boomers. We're kind of a lost generation a little bit. The baby boomers grew up on the farm. We were more into city and urban development, which kind of made us lose touch a little bit with localization and rural growth in a lot of matters. So what the Saskatchewan Green Party and myself, what we would like to do in the agriculture field is to get a rural revitalization program back into effect immediately. We want to see that agriculture takes a first priority, and from there we can grow the communities back based on farming that have been lost. Over the last 6 to 7 years, underneath our current government, they've been focused more on raw resources, which we feel has put agriculture on the back burner. Our farmers have been being ignored on the price of diesel, which is absolutely brutal right now and killing them, from the transportation due to, I'd say, the federal aspect of them into agriculture. They've been neglecting the grain transportation system, and we have dilapidating road systems. The Saskatchewan Green Party is very much wants a grassroots approach, and we are basically wanting to represent all farmers, and we want to have town hall meetings and consultation with the farmers and re-provide the services that have been stripped from them so that we can have lower cost of food and better quality of food.
Thank you very much, Ryan, for your response. Now, Cathy from the NDP party.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And first of all, I'd like to thank APAS for hosting this event today. But I'll begin on a personal level. Ag is central to my family's story. I grew up on a family farm in southern Saskatchewan. My grandfather homesteaded in 1909, and one of the first things he learned the hard way was the marketing power that the grain companies and the railways had over the farmers. He saw the need for farmers to work together to face these issues. So, along with other farm activists, he helped found the Saskatchewan Wheat Pool, one of the main characters in the story of ag in Saskatchewan. My father took over the farm, and he too supported the wheat pool and the power of farmers working together. This was the fabric of my childhood, and it's an important part of the backbone of this province. And our family's story is the story of so many. those who came here with a dream of a better life for their families, and finding that life here in Saskatchewan. On the provincial level, agriculture is and has been a big part of Saskatchewan's story since settlement began. After all, we are the breadbasket of Canada. Just on the export story alone, we see why ag matters. With $32.5 billion in exports in 2015 alone, my congratulations to all producers in Saskatchewan. We produce 65% of the world's lentils and 55% of the world's peas. That's no small accomplishment, and it shows how important agriculture is to our provincial economy. Livestock is also a large part of the story, $3 billion in sales in 2015. And cattle producers are stewarding some of our largest ecological natural reserves. So the story of Saskatchewan is the story of agriculture. It's part of who we are and who we will become in the future. The power of the railways is still a major issue. Climate change is already having a serious impact on ag in Saskatchewan. But farmers working together with effective government support is central to our continuing story. Ag does matter.
Thank you very much, Cathy. And our last panelist, Lyle Stewart.
Thank
Why
you very
ag
much,
matters.
Madam Moderator, Mr. President, APAS members, and ladies and gentlemen, and panelists. Agriculture certainly does matter in this province, maybe more than any other place, certainly in Canada. And Saskatchewan, the development of Saskatchewan began around agriculture. Agriculture developed the province. The province developed as agriculture was introduced and expanded, and our families grew up. Most people in Saskatchewan can trace their heritage back to a farm someplace in their family's past, and it had a keen influence on a huge influence on who we are as a people, and how we think about things. And now agriculture has grown from humble beginnings back before the turn of the 20th century even, to a major industry. And one of the few, Saskatchewan is one of the few jurisdictions that has the productive capacity to feed large segments of the world population. And Saskatchewan and a very few other jurisdictions are the buffer between plenty and insufficient food to feed the world. And so agriculture matters. It matters to the world, and it certainly matters to the people of this province, with our producers out of $32.5 billion of total exports from Saskatchewan last year. 15.1 billion were agricultural commodities, and that provides not only jobs for 50,000 people directly, but many people indirectly, and drives the economy, allowing us to do things to help with social programs, schools, hospitals, and so on.
Thank you very much, Lyle. So now let's move to questions relating to the Why Ag Matters document, starting with a question regarding new producers and generational change. The future looks promising for young and beginning producers. Demand for our products looks strong into the future, and the sky seems to be the limit when it comes to new and innovative production technologies. At the same time, today's beginning farmers face enormous obstacles in accessing the capital needed to establish a viable farming operation. As the average age of farmers continues to get older and the cost of entry continues to increase, what role do you feel the provincial government should play in ensuring a smooth transition from one generation to the next so our farms can remain family-owned and operated into the future? Each candidate has 1 minute to address the question. Please note the timekeeper will give you time at 30 seconds and 15 seconds. And if you go beyond that, you will, of course, hear the bell. So the order we'll respond to this question is starting with Rick Swenson, followed by Ryan Lamarche, Cathy Sproule, Lyle Stewart, and then finishing up with Darrin Lamoureux. Rick.
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I remember my first land loan, FCC, was north of 12%. It made for some sleepless nights. Today you don't have that. So long-term capital at reasonable rates has always been a requirement of intergenerational transfer. The other thing is it's important to have good risk management tools that you can use to buy some type of security, right? Whether that's a combination of crop insurance, some of the federal programs, but those are crucial to young people in particular, so that if it's a parent that's backing them up, that they don't put their life's work at risk in order to make sure the next generation. And it's one of the problems I've had with the current systems that are in place, because I don't think they're adequate in order to do the job.
Thank you very much, Rick. On to Ryan.
Yes, well, one of the biggest things the Saskatchewan Party would like to do is to reamp the Saskatchewan crop insurance program. We would like to do an expansion of it to allow in oil seeds, to allow in livestock, and what we call acts of God. Yes, there would be different premium packages available, but we feel that a lot of Saskatchewan farmers are not being treated properly under the disaster relief program, which is all full of bureaucratic red tape in our opinion, and really very little of that money is going to the farmers or the people in need at the time of the disaster. In order to get youth involved, key things we would like to do is we would like to offer in agriculture low interest loans. If there's any kind of collateral base coming from one generation to another, we could even arrange a lower based loans is what we would like to see. And as well, in conclusion, we just want to see education and growth in that area.
Thank you very much, Ryan. On to you, Cathy, your response.
Thanks. I think every beginning farmer has a dream of owning their own land, and that's something that is very, very difficult in this current climate in agriculture. Young producers, some of the difficulties they face is obviously access to startup capital and the farmland itself, because we know the prices are very high at this point in our history. So I think what a government needs to do is talk to farmers, find ways for farmers and farming communities to provide those young producers access to the capital, access to the farmland. And I think the other thing that we need to look at is adequate succession planning. Many farmers have all their equity tied up in the value of their land, and how to transfer that in a proper way to the next generation, ensuring that they have adequate retirement needs, is also an important aspect that we need to be looking at.
Thank you very much. And Lyle.
Thank you. Young people are coming back to the farms and getting involved in farming in a substantial manner now, more than we've seen certainly since the 1970s. And those young producers are being very successful. Agriculture is doing well, and they're doing particularly well. And Saskatchewan Crop Insurance has programs that help young farmers use a good experience discount of their family, that their family is built up. We have a program that we call the Farm Business Development Initiative, where we help young producers get professional help and as their parents as well, for succession planning and so on.
Thank you very much. And our last commenter on this question, Darrin.
The new generation has the new technology. What it basically means is that we have to be putting the money into the University of Saskatchewan Agriculture Department to get a better familiarization of how these products can be used to and be enhanced in order to be able to produce more on a shorter term and a longer process. But if we don't have the infrastructure in place to be able to get these products to market, there's no reason that the investment's going to occur then. So again, we have to make sure this rail line system gets put in place to get the commodities to Tidewater so we can get it to our global partners. We need to have the federal government and the provincial governments working together in order to creating these markets in India and creating the demand. If we don't have the demand, there's nothing the new generation farmers can do to enhance it. The nice thing about farming community is that it is passed on from one generation to the other, and they grow up on that family farm. They know what the obstacles already are when they take over the business. That's one of the advantages of the farming industry over any other type of business, is the awareness of what they're going to be coming across as time goes on. So they're already professional businessmen by the time they get their businesses set up. The governments have to be there as far as offering financing and making it available to them so that they can actually have the capital expenditures needed to get the market going.
Thank you very much, Darrin. So our next question relates to infrastructure and access to internet services. Agricultural producers increasingly rely heavily on technology to manage their operations and market their products. Broadband internet and cell phones are essential business tools, and producers are concerned that unreliable access to internet and poor cell coverage are negatively affecting their businesses. Does your party have a plan to expand access to rural broadband internet and improved cell phone coverage in rural Saskatchewan? Each candidate has 1 minute to address the question, and we will start with Ryan Lamarche with the Green Party.
Yes, the Saskatchewan Green Party has an initiative that is a key part of our agricultural platform. We have an advantage in Saskatchewan. We still have a government-based telephone and internet servicing. We can do that through our provincial government, do a rapid expansion of broadway connections to the rural areas. We feel that that is needed for home internet services, for rural internet services, as well as cellular services and connections to the internet. Another key thing that we feel that is lacking right now is in the universities, there's no courses on organic farming. We would like to expand the fields into that. Also look into the new field of hemp farming and also the infrastructure of developing the hemp and developing our resources. The Saskatchewan Green Party's #1 thing is localizing agriculture. We'd like to bring the food supply and everything back to local markets and allow the localization to reoccur from rural up.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And Cathy, would you address the question of infrastructure, please?
Thanks very much. If you turn to our platform, there's actually a firm commitment in our platform, and for everyone, it's on page 30 if you want to take notes. But the commitment there is that the Saskatchewan NDP will improve cell coverage in northern Saskatchewan and expand SaskTel broadband internet services throughout the province. So this is a commitment that the NDP have made in terms of the access to rural internet and cell phone coverage. And as we know, that's a critical part of every agricultural operation here in Saskatchewan today. Other things I think that you'll find within the platform are commitments in terms of social infrastructure and making Saskatchewan a more attractive place to live and raise a family, keeping costs low, making things more affordable. And I think that's a really important aspect for rural communities at this point in time, where sometimes it's getting tougher to make ends meet and we see the cost of utilities going up. And finally, I think we need to really take a look at our primary grid road network and improve that.
Thank you very much, Cathy. And Lyle, your response to infrastructure question.
Thank you. Our primary grid road network is a very good one, and our rural municipalities have done a fantastic job of building and maintaining that. And of course, the provincial government shares cost shares those projects with our municipalities, and as well as revenue sharing that municipalities can use for other expenses and issues. As far as high-speed internet and cell phone service across the province, there are still places where it's inadequate, and we've lobbied SaskTel to do better, and they have done better, but that's certainly one place where there is still room for improvement. We have more work to do.
Thank you very much, Lyle. And Darrin, your response to the question on infrastructure and access to internet.
Well, we know the Sask Party is going to be forming government on April 4th. There's no question about that. It's a matter of who's going to be forming the opposition and be able to make sure that the voice is heard for Crown corporations. Crown corporations are good. SaskTel is one of them. In order to provide this internet services that's being required, we would challenge the Sask Party government not to worry about the $132 million they're asking to clean up oil wells, and instead focus on putting in an internet service that is for today's people, for today's agricultural, and put into the industry that the oil industry is trying to take out of something that they've already contributed to. This is what an opposition has to fight for, is that the Crown corporations stay active, and the $132 million that presently he's requesting for the oil cleanup, that money gets redirected into infrastructure for internet access.
Thank you very much, Darrin. And Rick, as the last panelist on the question.
Thanks. The problem's endemic all over rural Saskatchewan. Everywhere you drive, people are asked the same question: why can't I get better service? I want to run a business. I want to do things and have the same amenities as you do in the large urban areas. I mean, I'm not going to be the government. The best you can do is be opposition and effective. we will push over the next 4 years to make the government listen to not strip the dividends out of SaskTel in order to balance a budget that isn't balanced, and put some money into providing this, because it is the foundation of how we're evolving out there. And if we don't have those services, we aren't going to stay in rural Saskatchewan, plain and simple. People won't stay in their communities. They won't build businesses. They won't keep their families there, and we won't have communities. So it's a priority that has to be changed by the Sask Party government.
Thank you very much, Rick. And Rick is the last panelist on that question. And our next question focuses on transportation. The transportation crisis that lasted from 2013 to 2014-15 demonstrated how crucial rail movement is to Saskatchewan's economy. Although rail transportation legislation is under federal jurisdiction, the provincial government can play a key leadership role in policy advocacy, as well as in investment in our short-line rail network. What is your party's vision for rail transportation in Saskatchewan? Does your party have a position on the Canadian Transportation Act report recommendations that were tabled in the House of Commons on February 25th? This question has 1 minute for each of the candidates, and we will begin with Cathy Sproule with the NDP.
1 minute is not nearly enough time to address it. I just wanted to get that on the record.
Yeah, and you're cutting into it right now.
Okay, I know the time is running. This is the single most important issue, I think, facing particularly grain producers here in Saskatchewan right now. The work that APAS did in coalition with other producers groups was very important work and very well done. Sadly, the CTA review completely ignored it. So I think once the dust settles after the election, as a province, we need to work together to bring forward, again, loudly and clearly how the maximum revenue entitlement needs to stay in place and how it needs to be improved. We need a full costing review first and foremost, and then we need to go from there and ensure that that the railways don't continue to monopolize and take away from the farmers. Also, we know that we've probably lost up to $5 billion just in the way the crisis of 2013 and 2014 happened. There's a lot of work to be done here, and we'll certainly be holding whoever's in government to the fire to ensure that this is looked after.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Lyle, your perspective on this.
Thank you. We, as a government, we're very engaged and have continued to be very engaged in the rail transportation issue, starting in the winter of 2013-14 when there became a large backlog of grain on the prairies, and the matter rose to a crisis level, I would have to say. We were the province that was the strongest by far in urging the federal government to take action, temporary action, albeit to move the backlog of grain. And we do have some issues with what we see in the CTA review. We urge the federal government to do extensive consultations in Western Canada before implementing what they've put on paper for us, and we will continue to lobby them to do the right thing for grain handling and transportation in Western Canada.
Thank you very much, Lyle. Darrin, over to you for a response to this. 13
out of 14 federal MPs during this grain crisis in 2013-14 was Conservative MPs with an agriculture minister involved with the Harper government. These are the individuals that Lyle was talking about. They didn't do nothing. What they did is they brought in some semis to carry the grain. They did not put any permanent solutions. What we're talking about, a rail line, is a permanent solution. The Hudson Bay rail line that's presently in Manitoba is partially funded by the provincial government. We need the rail line system put in place for Saskatchewan to get our commodities to a market. If we do not get our commodities to the Port of Churchill, we will be having the same problems we had 2 years ago, 3 years from now, when we have another record crop. We have to start addressing the infrastructure issues, and this is what we're starting to talk about now. $2.1 billion is being spent on an overpass around Regina that's going to divert 15% of the traffic around the community. They're still going to be going through Regina. This is a decision their government made. This money could have been put into a rail system that would have helped everybody in the province to get products to all of our smaller rural communities and to get products and commodities to the Port of Churchill. This is what real decisions are about. These are what real choices are about. And when we do form the opposition party, we will hold them accountable.
Thank you very much, Darrin. Rick, your perspective on the transportation issue.
Thank you. The PC Party has supported APAS and other commodity groups in their presentation. They've done an excellent job. It's simple. No change to MREs until we get a full costing review of rail companies. Reciprocal penalty agreements in place, and then we'll have a discussion about changing how railways are compensated. And if our government doesn't stand up and demand that, then they're letting down half the agricultural land in Canada. They're letting down our opportunity to value add our industry. And we have to have some discipline in that sector, or we're going to go through crisis after crisis, and we're going to blame it on the weather, and we're going to blame it on this and blame it on that. And we simply have to have access to our markets. We can grow all the lentils in the world, and if we can't get them to our customer, we've failed. So do those two things and then move on.
Thank you, Rick. And Ryan, you have the final comment on this question.
Yes, this is a very important thing for the Saskatchewan Green Party, and as far as I'm concerned, not one of the parties here are offering the key problem. This is a federal issue that is being put on our province. We got to get that really loud and clear. It's federal. So therefore, the Saskatchewan Green Party would be in discussions for immediate takeover of full agricultural rights for the province of Saskatchewan and tell Ottawa it's time to leave because you can't do the job. Either they're going to allow us to go into the transportation of railway, do that part, or completely leave agriculture to who knows it best, and that is the people of Saskatchewan who knows it best. The Trudeau government of the past has failed us on this. Mulroney government has privatized this, creating a nightmare. They have been worrying about oil and gas and raw resources instead of a perishable good, and they've been signing contracts looking like the good guy, but in the end, our product is not going out, and I think it's time for Saskatchewan to get on her feet and take control of this problem and solve it.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And I commend the panelists how you are sticking to time so well. I really wanted to be hitting this bell much more than I'm being allowed to. Now we have a question coming from beef producers from the APAS membership. Saskatchewan is Canada's second largest beef producing province, and cattle production plays a key role in ensuring a stable and prosperous future for Saskatchewan agriculture. Despite excellent market conditions in recent years, we continue to see producers selling their herds and exiting the industry. What strategies will your party adopt to encourage more investment in the Saskatchewan beef industry and increase our provincial beef herd? Each candidate has 1 minute to address the question, and we'll start with Lyle.
Yeah, thank you very much. While the livestock industry isn't growing as fast as some of us might have liked, it is notable that in 2014 we surpassed our $2 billion growth plan target in the livestock sector when sales of $2.7 billion were recorded. So, all is not lost. It's going pretty well, but the American sector is growing faster, but it must be remembered that until very recently, Canadian producers had to face the obstacle of cool, which was a unique burden imposed on us by the Americans, and finally we've beat that one. So, I think decisions will be made by the industry, but I'm optimistic that we'll see some more growth.
Thank you very much, Lyle. Over to this side, Darrin.
Well, beef prices, as we all know, have increased up to 2 years ago, and they've decreased a bit now. It is a growing market. People are getting back into the market. We have to look at how, again, opening up these markets to right around global. We know Japan and China are one of our greatest exports. These are the relationships that our federal government and our provincial leaders have to be engaged in. Our first minister meetings are important, and this is where these trade missions will open up markets for all of our producers. And at the end of the day, it comes down to consultation. We're here as a government to provide a service and create markets for you. That's it. If you have the knowledge and be able to expand your own market, we have to be there if we do have that act of God or some type of accident where a mad cow disease, to make sure that we don't lose the industry again. This is the responsibility of the government. The producers are fine. They know how to bring the product to the market. We just have to make sure that we're able to sell it.
Thank you very much, Darrin. Rick, your response to this question.
Well, it's good right now because the difference in the U.S. and Canadian dollar. So we're not feeling the pinch. But if that goes back to par, then we certainly will have questions being asked. I mean, we don't have an active federally inspected packing plant in this province anymore. So when you're dealing with your culls, they're going a long ways to market. We don't have the reciprocal agreements on provincially inspected kill facilities that I think we need, because, I mean, when we can't even go across the border into Manitoba or the other way, you know, it restricts our marketplace for a very valuable part of your herd. So there's work to be done there, and I really think that we need to encourage people. I mean, getting up in the middle of the night and going out there and calving that cow takes a special kind of person. And I think educationally, we need to be able to tell people it's worth going the extra mile to do those jobs.
Thank you, Rick. Geez, I was so close to hitting that bell. Ryan, your response to the question.
Yes, well, that's a key concern of the Saskatchewan Green Party. One thing we want to do is to reinstitute provincial inspections of our cattle here, and we feel that they need to be checked for diseases. They got to be checked, you know, overall for the protection of the cattle, so that we are able to get them onto market proper. We also would like to expand the market and see if there's any you know, markets, you know, with the European Union deal that's now in effect and other trade agreements. We would like to do that and expand that market. And another area we want to do, which is kind of unique, is we would like to educate our First Nations people. They have a lot of land that's not being used for agricultural purposes, and we feel that livestock as well could be used, which could help the quality of food control and food pricing on the Aboriginal reserves, as well as making it transparent for more markets and extra cattle growth in this province, and helping society to grow in a weak area.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And lastly, on the question of beef production, Cathy Sproule.
Thank you. I think there's a couple issues we haven't talked about yet, and one is the declining herd here in Saskatchewan. That's a major concern, and APAS has certainly identified that. I think we need to find ways to support small to medium-sized herds, and one way to do that is to reestablish the PFRA Community Pasture Program provincially, providing those kinds of supports. And I think a lot of producers now are saying, why would I bother even keeping my cattle? Because that program is no longer as strong and as helpful as it was when the federal government got rid of it a few years ago. The other thing I think that we need to talk about as well is confidence in farmer and producer organizations. I've heard a lot of concern about the management and control of within the Saskatchewan Cattlemen's Association, and I think I've been getting calls up until yesterday about discontent about the control feedlots have over the primary producers and how the checkoff needs to be revisited. So I think that those kinds of things also need to restore confidence to the producers here in Saskatchewan.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Our next question relates to income security. The Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan has surveyed Saskatchewan producers about the business risk management programs through Growing Forward 2. Survey results revealed increasing dissatisfaction with federal farm programs, particularly agri-stability, triggering a decline in program enrollment. What changes do you feel are necessary to ensure that federal farm programs can better meet the needs of Saskatchewan farmers and ranchers? Each candidate has 1 minute to address the question, and we will start with Darrin.
Well, again, consultation, as we've heard my previous answers, is actually very important. As a provincial government, the communication levels to the federal government to hear the concerns of produce producers, that is the key element to find the real solutions and the real answers. So what we have to do is we have to consult with all three. We have to consult with the producers, we have to consult with the provincial ministries, and we have to consult with the federal ministry, come to find a solution that will guarantee the incomes do not have the fluctuations of a bad crop year, and we were able to grow on previous experiences.
Thank you very much, Darrin. Rick, your response to that question.
Well, all due respect, you can consult all you want. If you're going broke, it's not going to do you much good. The current set of programs don't work. That's why everybody's dropping out of it. I mean, governments in the last round decided that they weren't going to put tax dollars at risk for agricultural programs. And I mean, I said, we have half the farmland in Canada. We contribute to the GDP of this country in a big way. I would think that is worth looking after in some way. I mean, if you're going to have a wreck, you got to be able to work the next year. That's what we all do. We're willing to take that risk to go out and risk our money and go again. But you've got to be able to buy your own protection. And nobody will complain if the premium is at a level that will guarantee I can at least cover my costs. And that's what PCMLAs would fight for. I helped design the GRIP program in my day. It didn't work for various reasons, but I think we need to revisit the idea that we can insure ourselves to the level at least of breaking even.
Thank you. Ryan, your response to the question.
Yes, well, this was another reason with a lot of thought into with our party here that we've been really focusing on why Saskatchewan needs to take control of agriculture. Saskatchewan is the breadbasket of the country and of the world in a lot of ways. And I feel that Ottawa and the federal government puts up these fancy little programs for show, trying to get a few votes, then they cancel them at convenience. They treat the eastern markets different than the western markets, which is all little things that are affecting our farmers and our pricing system. I think basically what Saskatchewan needs to do is to go into meetings with the federal government, try to take back as much control and power as we can, and keep on working with that and put in provincial programs through farmer consultations, through speaking to agricultural groups to enhance the quality and the overall growth of agriculture in Saskatchewan.
Thank you very much. Cathy, your response to the question.
I think it's very clear that agri-stability is not serving the needs of Saskatchewan producers, and certainly that's been brought forward to my attention over and over. So our commitment in our platform, and again that's on page 18 of our platform, is that we will work with the federal government to redesign agri-stability and agri-invest. I think that when Growing Forward 2 came forward, it was basically shoved down our throats, and there was really no ability for us to argue that it wasn't going to suit the needs of farmers. So we're very concerned about that and want to see a much stronger response. I felt that the provincial government, when we were dealing with Growing Forward 2, was really pandering to their federal friends at the time, which was very disappointing. And I think we need to take, again, in working with farmer groups and organizations, a much stronger voice and a protest to having these programs handed down the way they are. They're very important to producers, and we need to improve them.
Thank you very much, Cathy. And lastly, Lyle, your response to the question.
Thank you. Of course, Growing Forward 2 is still in full force and effect until March 31st of 2018, but talks have already begun on the effectiveness of that, and that will lead into how to improve it or change it. Many here will remember that in 2012, when the negotiations were concluded on Growing Forward 2, I was the only minister, and Saskatchewan was the only province that fought to maintain the status quo with agri-stability and agri-invest. We had no support from any other province or the federal government on that piece. So we lost that, and I'm concerned that probably not very much in the Fed-Prov dynamic has changed, except the name of the federal party that runs the government, and so I have low expectations of going back to those days. Finally, I got.
Just thank you very much, Lyle, and that ends that question. Now we have Dale Leftwich from SaskCanola to bring a question from their membership. Dale?
Yes, thank you very much to the panel for being here today. We're very happy that you're all taking agriculture so seriously. It is, in fact, a hugely important thing to all of the people of Saskatchewan, and thank you again for being here. I have a question about social license. In the age of endless information at our fingertips, consumers continue to question modern farming practices, which are widely used in our province to produce safe and nutritious food. As an industry, we have spent a lot of time defending these practices, which have been developed with a foundation of science. We have recently learned it is more about building trust with urban consumers and having conversations in order to change the perception some folks have about the safety of our food. At SaskCanola, we have produced a documentary to encourage farmers to have conversations in order to build those relationships based on trust. It's called License to Farm, and I hope you've all looked at it, and it's provided you an opportunity to talk with people about it. What will you do to protect Saskatchewan farmers' right to farm?
Thank you very much, Dale. And we're going to just give the panel, a few seconds to ponder that, because it was a question that wasn't part of the 10 in the preliminary document. And you have a minute to address it, and we're going to start with Rick, and then Ryan, Cathy, Lyle, and Darrin.
Thank you for the question. It's very topical today. The food industry isn't much different than politics. What you want is the maximum accountability and transparency. And I think we've done a pretty good job of both of them in agriculture. A lot of our products that we grow today on our farms are developed right within the province, either at the University of Saskatchewan or through various organizations. So we're pretty comfortable. The problem is we can't eat all of our production. We have to export it, and those people have to feel comfortable. And so I think what we need to do is put in place the same type of rules that we would expect with our tax dollars when it comes to that accountability and transparency. And I think the food industry understands that. And if consumers can see that, they won't question the science. You're always going to have people that have their own theories. We can't do anything about that.
Thank you, Rick. Ryan Lamarche.
Yes, well, I think that answering that question, I think a key thing to it a lot of times is to try to start with education is going to be a key thing. Saskatchewan used to be the hub of agricultural education throughout the world at one time. And over the years, it's been weakened down, and there's little bits of rebuilding, but we got to continue the modernization from looking at new types of crops that we can grow, diversity of crops, as well expand that into the livestock field and other farming areas. Those are key factors that we need to do, I believe. As well, I also believe that looking at organic farming and other methods as well and introducing that is going to be another factor that could really help. And as well, let the people decide. If science is very strong and can prove its record, label it if it's a GMO food or if it's a regular-based food. Let the people have the choice. Most people trust the science, and there's a lot of money put into the science. And I think overall that the food agricultural areas have been very good at it.
Thank you very much. Cathy.
Thanks for the question. I was actually very pleased to be able to be at the world premiere of License to Farm, and I think you're on the right track. And obviously, as a group of producers that know the story you need to tell, I think those kinds of vehicles are incredibly important. Obviously, a government should be supporting each grower group to be able to do those kinds of things, to tell their story. And we've seen some action on the part of this government to do that. I think we need to provide consumers with the confidence they need. You're struggling with the internet, with all sorts of things. If you go on the internet right now, you can find both sides of any story. And so I think it's an issue of marketing and telling the story. And I think I really want to commend the canola growers for that initiative. And I think we would certainly want to support that as we go forward in the future, is making sure those stories are properly told and that consumers are able to see the full story. Thank you very much,
Cathy. Lyle?
Thank you very much, Dale. That's a good question. And, the Saskatchewan Party strongly supports science-based solutions in agriculture as in other areas. And the science, and particularly GMOs, the science around GMOs is conclusive that GMOs are good, healthy, safe food. We will continue to resist efforts to, sort of denigrate GMOs by labeling them as something that might not be so good. And ag awareness is another thing. And our party has taken an initiative to try and retrain people about what really goes on in agriculture and how not only efficient but also environmentally sustainable it is these days.
Thank you very much, Lyle. And thank you, Dale, for bringing that question forward on behalf of SaskCanola.
Oh, Darrin.
Pardon? Oh, Darrin.
That's fine. Hopefully I still get my minute.
Absolutely, absolutely. I apologize for that.
Okay, well, that's what we were talking earlier about. The nice thing about farming business and farming industry is it's one generation passing the farm on to the next generation. This is where the kids growing up are learning what it is to be a farmer. As we had said earlier about our platform, is the fact that we need to be putting the money into the University of Saskatchewan in order to increase the agriculture department so we have a better understanding of what the global markets are expecting from what we're producing. If we can combine the both of the generational farmer growing up and taking over the farm and educating them on the process of what's going to be acceptable in global markets, combined with the fact of opening the markets up globally for your products, this is what will make Saskatchewan a very successful province.
Thank you very much, Darrin. I apologize for moving past you there too quickly. Thank you all for your thoughtful and considered responses. There are still several areas of interest to cover, but let's take a moment to thank our sponsors. Norm?
Thanks, Jeannie. Before I get started, though, I want to remind our online viewers that they can participate in today's conversation by sharing their thoughts on Twitter at Western Producer or at President APAS using the hashtag WhyAgMatters. An event like this doesn't happen overnight. It takes weeks of planning and support from a wide variety of partners and sponsors. On behalf of APAS, I'd like to thank our partners, the Western Producer, for their support in promoting and broadcasting this live stream to viewers across the province, and staff and management of the Persephone Theatre and Ramey Arts Centre for hosting our event. As a general farm organization in Saskatchewan, APAS is always pleased to work side by side with many commodity groups in the province on issues that affect agriculture. In fact, today's dialogue is sponsored in part by SaskCanola, the Saskatchewan Wheat Development Commission, and the Saskatchewan Egg Producers. I'd like to recognize the 104 RMs who are members of APAS and their elected representatives who shaped Why Ag Matters conversation we're having today by sharing their insights and challenges agriculture faces and the priorities we're discussing. But there's still a number of issues we want to hear about from the 5 panelists, so let's get back at it.
Thanks, Norm. So let's turn now to a question regarding crop insurance. Crop insurance has become an important risk management tool. In recent years, farmers have experienced record precipitation and flooding on thousands of acres of productive land. Will your party commit to changes in crop insurance to deal with flooded crop and pasture land to assist farmers and ranchers now and in the future? This question has a time limit of 1 minute, and we will start with Ryan.
Yes. That question is actually one of the key parts of our agricultural program we want. We want to totally restructure the Saskatchewan crop insurance program. We feel that it's very, right now it's very small scaled, and we want to expand it to offer, like we were saying earlier, oil seeds. We want to expand it into livestock, acts of God and stuff, and the farmers can pick basically the package deals that they want to suit their needs. Flooding's been a huge issue with the farmers. Tornadoes have been a huge issue, and you think they've been basically going to the disaster relief program, which has been an absolute flop in my opinion. It's full of bureaucratic red tape, and the disaster relief program is promising all this money and all that, but the farmer has to wait a year, 2 years, 3 years in backlog. It's costing them in their pocketbook, and they can't afford it. So the Saskatchewan crop insurance program needs to be opened, expand that market, and let the farmers have the choice of what they need covered.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Cathy, your response to that question?
We're committed to making some changes to the crop insurance program. In particular, in our platform, it reads, we will consult with producers to improve crop insurance, including better flood coverage and spot loss hail options. We know that the Sask Party promised spot loss hail before they came into government, and we're never able to provide that. That's the one that comes back the most often in conversations I've had with producers. And then the record levels of moisture that we have in the province right now, We need multi-year programs to deal with that. We certainly appreciate EPAS's recommendation to have an unceded acreage program to help people out on that side of things. And also the closed basin areas. We know that things aren't going very good right now in the Quill Lakes. So we need to find something to give those farmers some relief from those multi-year flood events that are impacting them very directly.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Lyle?
You know, I'm very familiar with the problem. In fact, if something could be done about multi-year flooded acres, my farm would be one of the ones that would gain the most in this province, as we've had hundreds of acres underwater for years. But must be remembered that Saskatchewan crop insurance is a Fed-Prov program. To make those kinds of changes to it, you have to have the federal government and the majority of the provinces on side to do so. And it's just a very unlikely, I would say impossible, to make that happen. And when it comes to spot loss hail insurance, I know Cathy wasn't around in those days before 2007, but the NDP actually canceled that not once but twice since the turn of the last century.
Thank you, Lyle. Over to Darrin.
Well, as Lyle's pointed out, there is a point of consultation you have to do with the federal government to ensure things actually occur. As he admits, he highly doubts anything's going to be done under his government. Again, it's one of the reasons why we want to be the opposition government, because we already have that voice in Ottawa that will listen to your concerns. The second thing is the fact that hail damage it affects every industry. The person I built buildings for, they're affected by the last 2 hailstorms because it dented every one of their brand new cars. They didn't have to close down their businesses, and neither should farmers. At the end of the day, the insurance has to be appropriate enough that it doesn't hurt your business to where you cannot be producing the following year. So if the levels aren't enabled to have what your investment at that point is, the government has to step in and be a lot larger player in this process.
Thank you very much, Darrin. And lastly, Rick, your perspective of this?
Well, 2 different issues. The closed basin issue, to me, it's simple. Those places like the Quills and others where you've got thousands of acres that are flooded out and it's water that is not terribly good for the soil, there is only one solution. The Crown has to step in and offer to purchase those acres and let people go somewhere else and make a living. You can't farm water, so deal with it. When it ever dries up, the Crown always has the ability to sell it back to someone. It's really difficult in East Central Saskatchewan to farm your knoll tops and make a living when your best land is in the bottom of the slough. So obviously the one cattail and you're out deal isn't working for an awful lot of people. You have to be able to buy longer term coverage, and I as a taxpayer wouldn't have any problem, Lyle, with compensating some of that good dirt that you got covered up in water, because I know at some point in time you're going to make it back to society with growing crops on it, and I think we have to take that attitude to solve the problem.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, panelists. We're over the half mile mark with our questions. Now we're going to turn to a question specific to carbon tax in the ag business. The new federal government has placed high priority on addressing climate change and is considering measures like carbon taxes. Unlike other business sectors, agriculture is not in a position to pass along increased costs to our consumers. What will your party do to ensure that agriculture is exempt from carbon tax and that producers will receive credit for their activities that sequester carbon on their own land? Perhaps we could start with you, Cathy.
Thanks very much. I really want to commend producers for their careful stewardship of the land. I know I can think back when my brother started doing zero-till, and it was sort of this strange thing that farmers were practicing, but now we see the environmental benefits of that and also the carbon storage that it provides. So those kinds of things need to be taken into account into any system which does a measurement of the impact of any industry on climate change and in greenhouse gas emissions. I just want to make it clear that under our platform, we're not proposing a carbon tax, and we are not looking at cap and trade either as ways of dealing with our carbon emissions. We are calling on the current government to implement their technology fund, which is a fund which would put a levy on high emitters and that the monies that those high emitters would put in would go into the Climate Change Foundation, which would then find innovative ways to allow the high emitters to reduce their impact. Farming needs to look at its impact as well. We know it's responsible for 10% of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you, Cathy. Lyle.
Well, thank you very much. You know, the Saskatchewan Party is not interested in implementing a carbon tax on farmland or on farm agriculture or on anything. But the federal Liberal Party has more than mused about it, and I would hope that all members of APAS and every other farm organization would lobby them to back down from that position. We've even received a document that suggests that they're talking about not recognizing carbon benefits that were accrued before 2005, which does not serve agriculture at all. We would have to go back to 1980 to catch most of the benefit that's been derived from switching to zero and minimum tillage and so on. So, you know, I think we will not be doing that, but we need your help to make sure that the federal government doesn't impose it upon us.
Thank you very much, Lyle. Over to you, Darrin.
Well, this is another thing that Brad Wall's brought out in the forefront, to have the smoke and mirrors to divert what really needs to be talked about in Saskatchewan's economy, and that's a 72% increase in natural resources that has been wasted. Now, at the end of the day, the carbon tax hasn't been defined. It's been just suggested. To be able to start assuming things are going to be happening with this carbon tax is one of the reasons why they're confrontational instead of being consulting. You cannot be confrontational on every little issue when you don't even know the details in full. But again, they'd rather scare, and then rather than inform properly, they'd rather use scare politics. I'll wait until there's a fine line of where the carbon tax has been defined. If all the global markets are participating in it, I'll guarantee you one thing: Saskatchewan will be the last person to sign the agreement, because we have to make sure every other country and every other jurisdiction around the global community has this impact in place before I would sign the agreement myself.
Thank you very much, Darrin. Over to you, Rick.
Well, the big problem with them is government puts them on, and then they get used to having them, and they become part of the budget process, and you know, it's not a zero-in, zero-out thing. Saskatchewan is, as we know, has gone through a transformation in how we farm, and I think there's probably a market there, but there's no discovery mechanism. You know, there's no grain exchange. We can take most of our crops, we can hedge them, we can do whatever. There's no discovery mechanism for what carbon is actually worth. And I think Saskatchewan should be a leader, perhaps, in establishing that discovery mechanism. But until then, you know what? Protect diesel fuel, because everything we do revolves around using diesel fuel. So we've got to protect that at all costs, because we have to move our crops so far to market. All our products have to move, and we need diesel fuel protected in any of these discussions that our government's going to have.
Thank you, Rick. And lastly, Ryan, on the topic.
Yes, well, be a surprise to you all here. The Saskatchewan Green Party is 100% in favor with the Sask Party against the carbon tax. We are not in any form in relation with our federal partners that support it. We are against it in all ways. We will back the Sask government in all ways. And actually, there is a letter from Brad Wall thanking the Saskatchewan Green Party for its strong position against this evil. It's like I don't know how you describe it. It's just eating away at farmers' profits and at everyone's profits. It's a job-killing, useless tax. And that's all it's going to be. They have electronic taxes that are supposed to go to recycling facilities. This money's being put into general revenue. The same thing's going to happen with this carbon tax that is being crammed down our throats, and it's just going to kill our farm industry more, hurt it, and it's really not going to get rid of any carbons. It's just going to be a money grab for the governments.
Thank you for finishing that, Ryan. Our next question is another one on water issues, and there were several water-related questions in the debate today. Recent years with flooding and drought have raised the importance of water management. Please identify your party's approach to water management and working with landowners to implement a management strategy that meets everyone's needs. Why don't we start with Lyle?
With regard to the Water Security Agency, there's a new drainage policy and water management policy that's out, and I know that APAS is familiar with it. And certainly, I'm confident that the Ministry of the Environment will put the people in place to do a proper job of implementing that strategy. When it comes to issues such as LIDAR, that's used already by Water Security Agency as warranted, and will likely continue to be used more. I just think I think there's great acceptance for Water Security Agency's new plan, and looking forward to it being implemented.
Thank you, Lyle. Darrin.
Overland flooding is an issue in farmland, and there's a way of diverting water into a pond or a pool that would grab back the land that's been lost on overland flooding. This is one of the ideas that we should be looking more at. The city of Regina has what we call the ditch. It was Wascana Creek, and this is the type of innovation that you could be putting on overland, is to be able to create something where it's like a retaining tank. It's a holding tank, and as the water goes up and down and fluctuates, it'll at least protect the land from overland flooding.
Thank you. Over to you, Rick.
Well, I'm afraid all of us up here are going to get awful old before I see that Water Security Agency doing much of anything. You drive around rural Saskatchewan and it seems like a track hose becoming a second piece of equipment, and that's just not right. I mean, water's going to be a precious resource at some point. I don't think there's been a policy put in place. John Diefenbaker was the last guy that had a vision about it, and he built the dam on the Saskatchewan River 50 years ago. So we need to get on with it and start managing this resource. Maybe it's time that a producer that's willing to drain 4 sloughs into one other one on his property should get paid for it. Maybe that's, and I think society has to come to that realization. Don't drain it on your neighbor, don't pump it on your neighbor, don't flood the Cabell Valley, Take responsibility, but there is a reward from society for taking responsibility. And I haven't heard anything out of the Water Security Agency or the current government suggest they're going in that direction.
Thank you, Rick. Ryan.
Well, pretty much the Saskatchewan Green Party, we feel very similar to Rick on this issue. We feel that it's been long ignored and that they're basically passing the buck. One farmer's draining it to the next farmer, he's not liking it, vice versa. Huge problem. We need to come up with a strategy. We need to sit in meetings with farmers and develop something that will really work. We don't have a full answer yet because we need consultation with our farmers to see what will work best for them and best for the environment. It's a balanced approach that we need both. One thing also, when it comes to water, it's an issue in my riding. We have some of the cleanest water in Bigger Sask Valley. The Sask Party put in a 20-year project just to bring ores from the Northwest Territories to my riding. They're going to be put, the dirty water is going to be put into concrete storage bins and buried, basically. There's lots of this stuff going on for only a 20-year project, chancing all this groundwater and permanent clean water damaging for agriculture. Those kind of things must be investigated and stopped.
Thank you very much. And last on this question, Cathy.
The amount of water in Saskatchewan in the last few years has been devastating to producers, to communities, to RMs, and it's probably the single most frequent concern that producers have raised with me since I became critic. The biggest problem that I'm hearing is that the current law is not being enforced. And what the current law does is it pits neighbors against neighbors first before any Water Security Agency official will step in. I've also spoken to people who work at Water Security Agency, and they are completely overwhelmed. And so this government has not taken the steps it needs. I remember when Dustin Duncan was Environment Minister, he said, well, we'll write them a letter and ask them to stop flooding. Well, everybody knows, and as Rick said, the track hose are out there, so obviously that didn't work. I think we need to take a much stronger approach to ensuring that the law is enforced, and it's not a fun thing to do, but it's the government's responsibility to do that, and that's what we would do.
Thank you very much, Cathy. And now we have a question on environmental support. Agricultural producers are the largest group of private sector land managers in Canada, and they provide many environmental goods and services enjoyed by society as a whole. Programs like Alternative Land Use Services, also known as ALICE, provide financial support to landowners to share some of the costs in providing those services. Please provide your party's perspective on ALICE and what your party would do to improve and expand environmental goods and services programs to producers in Saskatchewan. This is a 1-minute question, and we will start with Darrin.
Well, the one thing that our party's been looking at, and when we consult, is to be able to expand the farming community to be able to produce in the wintertime. We'd love to be putting in a loan infrastructure program in place to allow farmers to be able to buy greenhouses, to be able to expand the produce development. So this way we're not paying high produce rates in the wintertime. There's geothermal heating that's very popular now in homes that could be used in greenhouses that we could have year-round growing seasons. Who best to grow produce than our farmers? We don't need to be able to stop the farming season every November. It can be a continuous thing, and this is something the Liberal Party would be looking forward to talking about when we're in the opposition, is to be able to expand a growing season by implementing greenhouses and putting in interest-free loans and giving a grace period of 3-4 years until these can actually be producing and productive, and allow the farmers to have another way of generating revenue off the land that they already own and existing.
Thank you very much, Darrin. Over to you, Rick.
Well, I think it's a multi-party answer. It's not all government. There's a lot of organizations in society. I know I'm getting a tremendous volume of people writing in at the behest of Ducks Unlimited, who are asking government to change their policies vis-a-vis wetland retention. So I think it's one of those societal things that you have to include as many people as possible. The Wildlife Federation, Nature Conservancy, there's a lot of people that you need to talk to, and you don't. The problem that we have right now, it seems, in society is we want to put these people into some kind of a right or left political spectrum. Just because you think that we should have land that's in its native state, somehow you're on the left side of the spectrum, and that's just a bizarre argument. You can be hard right-wing politically and still believe in those concepts. So take the politics out of it. Let's talk about what society really needs and get on with paying for it.
Thank you, Rick. Ryan.
Yes, well, the Saskatchewan Green Party, that's what we really strongly believe in as well, is letting the farmers and the societies have the meetings and tell us what they want done. There again, Rick made a very valid point. If you stand up for anything environmental, you're marked as a left-wiener. If you stand up anything for business, you're marked as a right-wiener. That's got to stop when it comes to these issues like this. We've got to do what's best for the people of Saskatchewan, right flat out. And the best people who know are the people who own the lands, the societies who are investigating, researching, doing the sciences, and having the hands-on approach. They know better than the politicians. So we need the consultations back with the people, take the direction, and let them lead us on what is best. Thank you very much. Over to you, Cathy.
Thanks. I have to say I'm in agreement with these two guys. I mean, this is something that we are all responsible for. It's the here and now. I really believe that it is farmer-led groups or producer-led groups that are going to take the lead on this, and APAS with the ALICE is a good example of that. I also want to commend the South of the Divide Conservation Action Program they have a program called Results-Based Agreements. So they're drawing in private dollars and looking for ways to protect the integrity of some of the ranch natural grasslands that we have here in Saskatchewan. So we are all in this together, and I think it's incredibly important for governments to support those action groups, those organized groups, and as I talked earlier about the importance of farmers working together to make these changes. So I think any government should really support the efforts of those local groups doing that kind of work.
Thank you very much. And last, Lyle, if you can address the question.
Yeah, ALICE is a good program. It's privately funded by independent agencies, usually agencies with interest in the environment, and it's a good program that we would support in that capacity. And but we also do other things. We have an environmental farm plan that's available for producers, farm stewardship program, and agri-environmental group plans that can be very helpful to producers in that regard as well. So while ALICE is a potential opportunity for producers to be paid for some of the environmental benefits that they provide to society, and I've never, for the most part, got any credit for. There are also other programs.
Thank you very much. Now a question on the relationship between agricultural producers and the oil and gas industry. This is our last question that ties to the issue booklet, Why Does Agriculture Matter? And after that, we've already had 3 other questions come in, and we'll address those immediately after this question. The relationship between the oil and gas industry and landowners is regulated by the Surface Rights and Acquisitions Act, which has not been changed or updated since 1978. Many new technical and business developments have taken place in 38 years, making that legislation outdated in many ways. Consultations have taken place and new legislation has been drafted. So the question to the panel is, will your party deliver a firm commitment to introduce new surface rights legislation to improve the relationship between landowners and the oil and gas sectors? And secondly, would your party consider establishment of a third-party property rights advocate to inform government policy and assist landowners on property rights? So we're going to start with this question with Rick.
Thank you very much. I became energy minister 2 years after that act was brought in back in '87, and already the world had changed because horizontal drilling was starting to replace, vertical wells. But the other thing that's really happened, and I was glad to see the government came to their senses and pulled that proposed change that they had last year, is that the companies that people used to deal with, in many cases, were local. They were small Saskatchewan companies, or at least Canadian companies. Right now, the relationship between a lot of those surface rights owners and the company is nil, because the companies have bought each other out and they're headquartered somewhere else, and you don't have the same relationships that used to be in place. New legislation has to take that new reality into consideration. So you do need an advocate now, because you don't have the local guy to go plead your case with. And technology is going to keep moving on in the oil industry.
Thank you, Rick. Over to you, Ryan.
Yes, well, we believe very strongly that surface rights legislation needs a total remakeover. It needs to be a farmers-based approach. Landowners have, like right now there's no property rights. We believe they should be treated as the property owner, and their say on their land is first priority. And under the Surface Rights Act, we would like to see it changed so that the farmers and the people who own the land have the first say. And they can sit in consultations and meetings and make sure that these companies are gonna, if they decide on developing this resource, that those companies are responsible for the environmental cleanups if needed, not the government, not the farmers, and accountability, and also negotiations on percentages of money that they get on it should be between the farmer and those companies. We think that whole legislation needs to be looked at, reamped, and basically return the power back to the landowner and entrench their right as an owner.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Over to you, Cathy.
Thanks. I would say the answers to both those questions are yes.
Yes.
We will, and this I'm reading right out of our platform, we will modernize surface rights legislation in consultation with producers, and we will establish a farmers advocate office as requested by the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan to assist producers affected by energy developments and those with rail complaints. So we would not only deal with energy developments, and we know how quickly that has changed the landscape here in Saskatchewan in the last 10 years, and then rail complaints as well, which is another issue where farmers are needing some support. I think the government, when they pulled this bill back in December of 2013, I think it was, they dropped the ball big time, and it was very disappointing. I think a lot of people had participated in good faith on those consultations, and APAS was a definite leader in those consultations as well. And when Bill Boyd, who's now missing in action, pulled that bill, it was a disappointment, and I think a disrespect to all those people who participated.
Thank you very much, Cathy. And over to you, Lyle.
Thank you. Saskatchewan has seen a number of relatively minor disputes between agriculture and the oil and gas industry. It's not it's not to the bitter extent that we see in Alberta, and a great deal of that credit goes to the Surface Rights Arbitration Board, who have done a very good job on behalf of both agriculture and the oil and gas industry in settling these disputes in a reasonable fashion. But having said that, any act as old as this one is, generally speaking, outdated, and this one's no exception. And the Ministry of the Economy did put something forward, but recently. But we've decided that more consultations are needed, and expect something new in the not too distant future.
Thank you very much, Lyle. Over to you, Darrin.
This is the second election that I've participated in the provincial. I was in the Lloydminster by-election 17 months ago. This is a huge issue in Lloydminster. The amount of land the farmers are losing just from the placement of the oil wells themselves. But to take the context of how it's being affected, we have to get both players involved. We have to get the oil producers, and we have to get the farmers communicating to see what compensation can be arrived at. And this is why I agree we need to have a separate department, an auditor, and an ombudsman to make sure that fair compensation is given to the farming community.
Thank you very much, Darrin. And that is the last question that ties to the issue book, Why Does Agriculture Matter? But let's go on to the several questions we have. Some have come in on Twitter, and very exciting, because that allows Norm and I to practice our handwriting, writing these questions out. So, a question from Community Pasture Patrons Association, and because we had Rick start the last round, Ryan, this question will start with you. There is a significant difference in the expectations of community pasture patrons versus private lease holders. Studies by PFRA, Sask Wildlife, community pasture patrons, and the environmental community show that the public benefit to the wider community represents half of the total benefit of the pastures. In fact, public benefits have been estimated at over $26 million annually. The provincial government will receive $11 million annually in lease and surface rights revenue, which previously went directly to the PFRA. If elected, would you support $1 to $2 million of this new money back into the pastures program to support quality management to benefit patrons, the environment, and our wider community? And we'll start with Ryan.
Sure. Yes, 100% is the answer to that. The Saskatchewan Green Party believes very strongly in the community pastures and the community pasture programs. We think that it's a very beneficial program for the people of Saskatchewan. We can, like you said, for surface rights, the Saskatchewan government gets money, communities get money, and we're all about localizing the community. So we could organize, localized fields for livestock education. We can localize for gardening, to have local food to lower costs, also for education for our students. There's many aspects we can do with it, and at the same time, the Saskatchewan government does make some revenue with that, but that money could be reinvested into that program to continue agriculture at a small scale, and for the local communities and the small rural communities to have revitalization program, and that is one huge program that would help.
Thank you very much. On to you, Cathy.
Again, our answer is yes, and you'll find that commitment in our platform. We know that the public benefits are huge for the PFRA community pastures in particular, and they've been around for decades, and I think there's a number of scientific studies that can support that. We know this is a source of new money for the government because they weren't getting any revenues from these pastures when the federal government was managing the program. They'll be getting $11 million. Of course, $1 to $2 million would make a lot of sense to support the maintenance and the continuing management of those pastures. One idea might be that the monies, I think there's a pilot going on in the Lone Tree Community Pasture right now, where an environmental committee would manage the funds and they would pay for half of the manager's salary. And I think that itself would keep that interest in the public benefit going, but also serve those ranchers and the small to medium-sized herds that need those pastures to be continued.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Lyle?
We can consider almost anything, but what we've tried to do with the transition of the PFRA pastures back to provincial control is to treat them as much like other lease land, provincially owned lease land, as we possibly can. And you know, as far as a special public contribution that's made by PFRA pastures, I would have to say that there are 17.5, I think, million acres of native grassland in this province, and the transitioning PFRA pastures don't contribute any more than any other, you know, acre for acre, than any other acre of native prairie grassland. And so we have to be careful to treat these entities and individuals and patrons groups the same as we treat everybody else in the province.
Thank you, Lyle. Over to Darrin.
The SaskCanola Party would support it. The answer is yes. In order to have hands-on experience maintaining, it's a small investment, so the SaskCanola Party would support it.
Thank you. Over to you, Rick.
Well, to suggest that the provincial government doesn't derive revenue way and above what it would cost to fix a little fence and keep those pastures is bizarre, because I just know from the former ministry that I had in oil and gas, there's a ton of money coming to the provincial crown, okay? But I think the bigger question is, we had it earlier about growing your cattle business. Those pastures were foundational because mostly mixed farmers, people grain and cattle, and they would switch back and forth depending on what your commodity markets were doing. To me, that's an asset. When you have that ability in the farming community to move back and forth, and that is herd building, okay? That's the reason why you do it. And those pastures don't cost that much to the Treasury of Saskatchewan to maintain that structure.
Thank you very much, Rick, and that's the last person to speak on that question. We have a couple more that came in earlier, but this one I find really interesting that just came through on Twitter. Recent study shows that there is a current ag labor shortage in Canada of 56,000 positions, of which Saskatchewan is approximately 15,000 of those numbers. It's estimated that this shortage will increase to 114,000 labor vacancies across Canada by 2025. What measures will your party do to work towards rectifying this gap? And we'll start with Cathy.
Certainly we know that there is a shortage of ag workers in Saskatchewan, and we've been talking about that over the last few years. And as you indicated, it's not going to get better, it's likely to get worse. We need to see better improvements to our immigrant programs to make sure that temporary workers are able to come and work through the agricultural seasons. We were let down by the federal government recently in some of their reductions to the immigrant nominee program, for example. And so those kinds of programs, I think, again, we need a strong provincial government to work closely with and demand strongly to the federal government to ensure that we have access to the workforce that we need. And I think there are ways to, strengthen local communities so that there are more people there that are available for the workforce. So keep the local communities strong as well. That would be our solution.
Thank you, Cathy. Over to you, Lyle.
Thank you. I find myself in the unusual position of agreeing completely with my friend Cathy Sproule on this issue. And we do that from time to time. Yes, we would lobby the federal government to not only retain, but to enhance the temporary foreign workers program. It's the best tool we have to recruit farm workers from outside of the province, and the issue goes on. There are some layoffs in the oil and gas sector, but we haven't seen them filtering down to the farms very much yet, and so the problem still persists, and that is one of the main solutions to it, we believe.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Darrin.
Shortage in the ag business for labor is the same as any industry in Saskatchewan right now. There's shortages in construction, there's shortages in our healthcare workers, there's shortages everywhere. The Saskatchewan Labor Party does not support the temporary foreign worker program. There's no value in it. People are sending their money back home to their countries that they're originating from, and there's no secondary benefit from the dollars that they're earning. increasing immigration levels to where they're sustainable is one option. The second option is to get First Nations and Métis Federation individuals geared towards the rural part of the market where most of this agribusiness actually occurs. We have 25% unemployment in most First Nations communities. This is the stuff that the government has to start taking a more proactive approach than doing the spot things and lobbying the government for temporary foreign workers, where 14,200 were here in 2014. There's a time when you have to build your economy by hardworking Saskatchewan citizens. We were all immigrants at one point. We've all been able to grow Saskatchewan's economy to what it is today. So no, the Saskatchewan Party does not support the temporary foreign work program. We do believe in expanding the immigration policies.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Rick.
Well, I see it as a two-part problem. There's certain skill sets that we satisfy with immigrant labor short-term that we lack right now. And I think we all want to see that continue because it helps Saskatchewan. But long-term, I'm with Darrin on this. I've been approached by chiefs of 3 First Nations in the constituency I'm running in. And they've approached both federal and provincial governments just recently about how they can change their educational matrix to focus on agriculture. I mean, these are rural people. I mean, they know what a tractor is, they know what a cow is, okay? And there's no reason that we should have what will soon be 20% of our population excluded from agriculture simply because they don't have the educational ability or the cultural ability right now to deal with it. And I think we're really remiss if we're saying that a fifth of the population can't be a part of the solution, you know?
Thank you very much, Rick. And lastly, Ryan, to end that question.
Yes, that was definitely, I agree with Darrin and Rick on this issue 100%. That's what I was saying earlier as well, is that our First Nations people, they have the land available that's not being used. They need to be educated into the agricultural and livestock and contribute to the local reserves, and then the reserves can sell to the province and stuff, making them self-sufficient as they once were, again, on the Aboriginal lands. I think that's like 20-25% of the population. We definitely need to get them involved. The temporary work program is only a temporary solution. It is not fixing nothing. As Darrin stated, the majority of that money does not even stay in Canada. It costs us. Immigration is needed, of course. That is always here. But also we would like to take a lot of the healthy hands and stuff into social assistance programs and other programs and teach them in the agricultural fields and other areas of shortage. Get them skills needed. A lot of these people, there's shortage of work and they need skills.
Thank you very much, Ryan, to end that question. We have 2 questions left in the debate. This question will start with Lyle as far as response. There are 11 grassroots watershed stewardship groups in Saskatchewan. The Water Security Agency provides funding to the groups to promote source water protection education and implement good, sound environmental projects. All watershed groups are committed to supporting the province's 25-year water security plan. Watershed staff deliver the province's agri-environmental group plan to agriculture producers, provide support and local expertise in delivering the province's aquatic invasive monitoring program, and pilot many areas of integrated water resource management such as drainage. Does your party commit to elevating core funding for the watershed stewardship groups, and will the watershed groups have a voice in water management policy at the provincial level?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very interesting question because we haven't been approached by the water stewardship groups. Of course, they would be dealing with the Ministry of the Environment, which is responsible for watershed issues. But we certainly applaud them for the work they do. We support their efforts, and and we know that they're in agreement with our 25-year water strategy that's been mentioned here already today, and we're fully aware that the previous program that was developed in the 80s has never worked, and it just caused the employees of the water crown to run around in circles chasing after these these projects that they could never really get control of, and with no teeth to do it.
Thank you, Lyle. Over to you, Darrin.
As pointed out earlier, we're not going to be the government on April 4th. What we will be is the opposition. So groups like this will have the ability to approach us where we can get their questions on the legislative floor in order to hold the government accountable. The real choice of this election is going to be who do you best feel the opposition is going to represent you, the voter. So all of the groups that we've talked about today that are trying to advocate for what it concerns them comes down to having an opposition. A good government needs a good opposition. This is what we will provide to all the groups, not just this one in particular.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Rick.
Well, yeah, you applaud the people that are currently involved because they're doing their best with very little. You know, they're the people that are going around encouraging us to roll up our green bags and not burn our twine and pollute, you know, rivers and streams. And you have to applaud them because they work on a shoestring. But there has to be a bigger picture here. There's lots of issues. It seems with the current government that big business trumps all. And in the riding I'm currently running in, there's a proposed potash mine by a Chinese coal company. And SaskWater's prepared to put in a water line to the potash mine, but they're not prepared to let anybody else in the community draw off it. Taxpayer paid water line paid back by the Chinese company, but nobody else gets water. I mean, it's bizarre to have a program in place like that. So we have to have a bigger picture and outlook at this whole thing in water.
Thank you very much, Rick. Ryan.
Yes, we feel that 100% that organizations that are about the water and water safety in Saskatchewan, we definitely need consultation with it at times. We feel that the public knows best, these groups know best because they're specializing in an area of passion to them. So when you're passionate about something, you obviously really know the in-depth cycles of it, and I feel that they could really give us as opposition members or as government members the best advice on what to do and what is needed. And we would definitely be talking with groups such as that.
Okay. And the last speaker on this question is Cathy.
Well, kudos to the watershed stewards for the work they do. I've met with them a couple times, and they're very proud and passionate about the work that they do. In fact, they've even been able to be a judge. They have a contest for grade 8 students, I believe, to come up with ideas to protect the watershed. And so the education work they do alone, I think, is invaluable and very, very important to awareness about the watersheds, the role of watersheds. And I think, as Rick pointed out, there's a number of community organizations that are working on various aspects of stewardship and environmental protection. And I think they all need that sort of support from the government level and from taxpayers' dollars to continue to do that work, because I think it needs to be seamless with the work the government is doing. The Water Security Agency's 25-year plan, as far as I'm concerned, is just on paper right now. The proof will be in the pudding, and we need to see much more action and not just writing it down on a piece of paper.
Thank you very much, Cathy. We have one more question that we're going to ask of our panel, and following that, we've asked all of them to speak for up to 2 minutes, is the time allotment, on anything that they'd like to say about anything. We anticipate it's going to be about politics, but we've kind of left it open. It could be about anything. So the last question, and we'll have Darrin start with the answers on this, is on organics, and it comes from Sask Organics. The Saskatchewan organic industry is a significant player in the growing global organic industry. There are 842 certified organic primary producers in the province and 89 certified organic processors. There's over 1 million field crop acres, over 900,000 pasture and forage acres, and over 1,700 fruit and vegetable acres, all certified organic in the province. The demand for organic grains significantly exceeds the supply, resulting in a very buoyant price for most categories of cereals, pulses, and oilseeds. Given the great opportunity currently available in Saskatchewan's organic industry, what will your party do to assist the development of the organic sector in the province if you're elected to government on April 4th? So
well, like I said, is that we're not going to be the government, we'll be the opposition. So at the end of the day, what we're prepared to do is to fight to allow for open markets on a global, so we can get our produce and we can get our commodities to a global market. As this question's pointed out, there is a great supply. What we need is purchasers. Unlike members on the panel, consultation is huge. If you do not consult with your federal government through a First Minister meetings and go on global trade missions to China and to India and to all these other places that we can put our produce on a global stage and be able to market it, we're limiting our own growth as a province. So you have to be able to work with all three levels of government, from your First Nations governments to your provincial governments and your federal governments, because it's important that that federal funding that can come in for the infrastructure to put in rail lines to Port of Churchill can be put in place to get our products to Tidewater.
Thank you very much, Darrin. Over to Rick for your 1-minute answer.
Well, I know from being a registered seed grower most of my life that you need a good regulatory regime in which to conduct your business. And I've had a lot of people in the organic business say to me, you know, we have too many different regulatory regimes in North America and Europe, and depending on which one you fit into is, you know. The other thing is that the guarantees that they used to have on getting paid when the single desk was in place aren't in place anymore. So you're really taking a chance when you ship your crop off to a buyer, and if that buyer happens to be in a jurisdiction where Canadian law doesn't hold sway, you may be eating it, and that's just not fair. So we need to put in place those type of regulatory mechanisms to make sure that producers can sell their crop, it's going to be certified, and they're going to get paid. And we need to work with the feds to do that.
Thank you, Rick. Ryan.
Yes, actually Rick nailed a lot of our key points as well on that, on the organic farming. We definitely need a regulatory board that's going to be monitoring it and basically guiding the controls and the pricing of some form with the organic area. We also feel that more education is needed in our universities to educate for more qualified people. There is a market out there for the good, and there again, we got to go back to localizing. So if we're growing here in Saskatchewan, central Saskatchewan, have something here where they can sell it and implement it in central Saskatchewan to keep the prices low, and start the local first, export second. I think that would really lower the price and help the farmers for a better return at the end as well.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Cathy, your perspective on this question.
I think there's a couple issues that I've been hearing about with organic farmers and the issues they're facing. First off is access to producer cars. I think that's one of the big issues they're facing right now. With these 100-unit trains that the main railway lines insist on, it's very difficult for these farmers to actually transport their wheat. I think we have a number of commitments in our platform that, one of them is we will review the allocation of producer cars to ensure short lines are properly served and develop a long-term plan for a renewal of the producer car fleet. And we haven't heard anything about that. Secondly, I think in terms of ag research, we see a lot of focus on ag biotech, and that's an important part of research, but I'd like to see an equivalency for organic research as well, and I think we need to make sure that the research dollars are fairly allocated, so that would be the second issue.
Thank you, Cathy. And last answer on the last question, Lyle.
Thank you. I'm very proud of agriculture in this province, and all segments of agriculture, and including organic, and our government has tried to be encouraging to every sector of the agriculture industry, and we certainly feel the same about organic, and there are some issues with getting smaller quantities of organic crops shipped. We recognize that, but it would fall under the submission that we made to the CTA review for the railways to be required to provide equal service to all customers on all corridors, and that looks after short lines, branch lines, producer car shippers, and small processing plants. So, absolutely agree. I think we all agree on this one. We're all proud of the organic industry, and we want to help them continue.
Thank you very much, Lyle. Well, that is the questions for our debate concluded. Now we will hear from each of the panelists, and they have up to 2 minutes to tell us what they want to tell us about the subject or themselves or their vision or their party's vision for this issue in our province. And so we will start with Darrin, and we will finish with Lyle.
On April 4th, you have a decision. The decision that we feel that you have to make is who's going to be the opposition and who's going to hear your concerns. We don't have all the answers in the Saskatchewan Liberal Party. Our ears are open to you and to other communities, other business communities, to hold the wall government accountable. What we do know is we wouldn't spend $2.1 billion on an overpass when there's 9,000 senior health care homes that could have been built. We wouldn't spend $2.1 billion on an overpass when we could have put a rail line in place. We wouldn't spend $2.1 billion on an overpass when we can build refineries and real employment and real jobs for rural Saskatchewan. What I'm asking today is that you look at the Liberal Party being the alternative, the opposition, because Cam Broden hasn't held the wall government accountable for the 72% increase in the revenue that they've enjoyed in the last 6-7 years. This is money that could have been spent on improving our infrastructure that should be spent today on our infrastructure. Mr. Trudeau is putting out an infrastructure program in the budget today. These are dollars that could have been available to Saskatchewan had they just consulted a little bit. When you're talking about $132 million to clean up old oil wells where this industry should have taken care of their own problems, as producers, I would be offended by that. This is money that could have been put into infrastructure projects that would have better suited the production, would have better suited the accessibility to get your products to market. These are the issues that we will bring up as an opposition that the NDP haven't brought up. In 2014, we opposed the bypass when it could have still been, when that could have been changed and the spending deferred to other projects. This is the real question for us as the Liberal Party is the Sask Party will be forming government on April 4th. We want to be the opposition. We will hear your concerns, we will bring them on the legislative floor, and we will give support to the communities that need the support. This is what a real opposition does and an effective government is hold the government accountable. So on April 4th, please vote for the Liberal Party. And I really enjoyed the conversation today, and thank you for letting me attend.
Thank you very much, Darrin. Over to you, Rick, for your 2 minutes.
Thanks. I want to finish the conversation today on what I think is the most crucial question in agriculture today. And I could talk about a lot of other things, but I think my experience and the experience that a few PC MLAs could bring to the Legislative Assembly on this file would be crucial. And that's transportation. The government put out a document several years ago, a growth document, saying that we would produce a whole host of goods and we would produce more of them. And agriculture has done fantastic. Those agendas have been met. But if we can't get our products to market, then it simply doesn't matter. Along with that growth agenda should have been a transportation agenda. You know, a 10-year plan where we would define some corridors, where you would look at how the rail network should evolve over a 10-year period. I mean, our short lines, there's 14 of them, they get less money, less than $10 million per year out of the provincial treasury than what two guys made flipping 204 acres on the west bypass by the GTH, okay? That gives you some sense of the current priorities. We know that that rail network has to survive in order for our road system to survive. We need to have a discussion about speed and weight, you know? Is it important to stay at 44 tons or should we be down to 70 in our key corridors? Because our RMs can't keep up the costs of maintaining those roads, you know, if you're at 110 and 44 tons. I mean, those discussions aren't happening in the legislature. I don't know why they're not happening, but they're not. And they need to, because we live by what we export. And if we don't have that discussion in a reasonable fashion and set some parameters in place, we can grow all we want. When the guy in India knocks on the door and says, I need the lentils, and they're not there, it doesn't do us much good, does it?
Thank you, Rick. Over to you, Ryan.
Yes. Well, the very first thing I want to stress loud and clear, the Saskatchewan Green Party, you know, we're known by the name right away as being an environmental party. No, we're not necessarily an environmental party. Environment is important, but we are way more than that. Agriculture is the Saskatchewan Green Party's #1 focus right now. And transportation of the goods, as Rick has said, and as Darrin has said, is absolutely crucial. There's been a neglect in that area with agriculture. Our farmers are growing good crops, record crops, then there's backlogs. We feel the federal government needs to have less clause in here and allow agriculture to go back to the government of Saskatchewan and let the people of Saskatchewan run it. We feel that that approach is going to work better than the current system, and basically reinstating our farmers as the voice of power, telling the politicians and people what to do. We also feel that there's been some serious neglects is in rural communities. A total rural investment is needed in rural agriculture. Rural schools are falling apart. We need to be educating our children in the schooling systems for agricultural needs as well as for other optional needs in areas that they want to go and have their career in. As well, rural healthcare is a disaster right now. The NDP had slashed rural hospitals and rural facilities down to nothing at one time. The Sask Party hasn't done nothing to put that back. We have an aging population. We need the security, and we also need to lower the price of food, and we need food security. This is why I'm running for the Saskatchewan Green Party. I want some new approaches, and I want a grassroots approach from the people up to the government. And I'm hoping on April 4th that I could count on support, me and my fellow colleagues for the Saskatchewan Green Party.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Cathy, your last 2 minutes of conversation for today's debate.
Well, first of all, again, thanks to APAS for hosting this. I think it's been a really valuable experience for all of us, and certainly I hope the listeners have a sense of where each of us are coming from and the issues facing producers today. I didn't get a chance to talk about some of the transportation platform items that we have, and I think one of the things that's happened since we've seen the removal of the single desk for wheat is that there's been a lot of chaos in terms of marketing. So I think we need some better tools to enable producers to deal with the change that we've seen. We are calling on grain companies to have fair and clear contracts, which explicitly identify price, delivery location, payment terms, and a fair resolution process for disputes. This is something farmers are calling for, and I think this is legislation that's required. Secondly, I think we would do this through legislation as well as require price input weekly report, so we get costs of inputs throughout the province and provide those to producers online, and also importantly a grain sale price weekly report so that farmers can see the costs of grain sale prices not only at the inland terminals but also at the port and the volume of grain sold. We also want some incentives for short line railways, including tax rebates for producers who establish grain storage and loading facilities on short line railways. So we really need to strengthen that network. What we've heard over the last 4 years and what we've seen happen is that the Sask Party is no longer listening. And we've seen the number of misplaced priorities that have been identified. Instead of stopping the waste, they actually drained the rainy day fund during the sunniest economic days that this province has seen. They've thrown away our resource wealth, and they haven't even saved a dime. In fact, they've now put us into deficit and racked up a debt. Our leader, Cam Broughton, is clear. The NDP is focused on what matters to Saskatchewan, families, and communities. Ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cathy. And our last panelist having his last 2 minutes of the debate. Lyle, over to you.
Thank you. You know, I want to talk about agriculture in my last 2 minutes and how proud I am of it and how proud I've been to serve agriculture and my constituency as well, which is primarily agriculture, and I'm very hopeful that the Saskatchewan Party will be returned to government again for another term, so that we can continue to serve agriculture and promote agriculture to the general public, continue to help the industry market products abroad, continue to help the industry to achieve science-based solutions to the issues that come along, continue to be an advocate for the industry. You know, we've in our plan for growth, we've 3 out of 5 of the bullets in our plan for growth have been exceeded already, with still almost 5 years to go, and that's due to the hard work and diligence of our agricultural producers in all sectors. And you know, we've surpassed the crop production goal. We've surpassed the agricultural exports goal, and we've surpassed the annual livestock cash receipts goal, and we did all of those things with at least 5 years to go in the growth plan. It's been a great honor for me to represent agriculture this last nearly 4 years as minister, and it's always an honor to represent my constituents. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to do good things for the agricultural industry for another 4 years. And I thank APAS for this opportunity for all of us, and I think it's been a pleasurable experience, and I even got to agree with my friend Cathy once, so I always enjoy that.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our panel, Darrin Lamoureux from the Saskatchewan Liberal Party, Rick Swenson, Saskatchewan Progressive Conservative Party, Brian Lamarche, Green Party of Saskatchewan, Cathy Sproule from the Saskatchewan New Democratic Party, and Lyle Stewart from the Saskatchewan Party. When I was asked to moderate this debate, someone asked me, well, isn't that a little stressful? And I said, no, because we're going to have a respectful, issue-related, information-rich exchange of ideas. And I think that's exactly what happened in this time frame. I think if you've been watching this episode, you will really have a better idea about these issues that were so important for APAS to bring forward to this group, and to get these issues addressed, these issues questioned, and to hear what each of the parties think about these different issues. So our time is basically up. I want to thank Norm Hall, who shared the desk with me today, and pass the mic back to him.
Thanks, Jeannie. Now, I too want to thank Darrin, Rick, Ryan, Cathy, and Lyle for spending the time with us today. We look forward to speaking and working with you to ensure that ag continues to be top priority for all 5 parties. I also want to thank our partners, the Western Producer, and to our sponsors, SaskCanola, Sask Wheat Development Commission, and the Saskatchewan Egg Producers, our rural municipalities, associate members as well. Remember, you can always find our document, Why Ag Matters, on our website at www.apas.ca, or view the entire dialogue today at www.westernproducer.com/whyagmatters. And and this happened a couple times on Twitter, if high-speed rural internet access is an issue, you can watch the highlights of this debate or this dialogue on Access 7 and Shaw community channels across Saskatchewan on Sunday, March 27th at 4 p.m. Or Thursday, March 31st at 6 p.m. And remember, ag matters, and it matters for a lot of reasons. And be part of the conversation. Get out and vote on April 4th so that your voice is heard. Vote for the party that best represents the vision that you have for the future of agriculture and rural communities. My name is Norm Hall, and I'm the president of the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan. Thank you for watching.
And we're wrapped.